Hi all, this is BRR. Welcome to BRR Knowledge Hub. In this video session, we'll talk about API gateway architecture and its benefits. Because nowadays, we are frequently implementing microservices, monolithic services, and RESTful services with a different kind of purposes. So, to access all these kind of services, we definitely require a gateway. So, where it is a server, and this is a single entry point into the system. So API gateway is a server that is a single entry point to the system. It is similar to the facade pattern from object-oriented design. So what is a facade design pattern? Facade design pattern is one of the structural design pattern of the gang of 4 design patterns. So I will not talk about more on this design pattern, and we'll talk about this in the next coming sessions when it comes to the design patterns. So the main purpose of this packet design pattern is when we have a complex system that we wanted to expose to clients in a simplified way, we definitely use the facade design pattern, because the purpose of this facade design pattern is to hide internal complexity behind a single interface that appears simple from the outside. So when you have a complex system and you want to expose some uh, services to the client in a simplified manner, then we'll choose this facade design pattern, because the purpose of this facade design pattern is to hide the internal complexity of system, and it just provides a single interface that appears simple from the outside. So we'll see different kind of benefits if we are implementing API gateway to access your system services. Okay, so generally this API gateway encapsulates this internal system architecture and provides an API that is tailored to each client. So this is the single entry point for all the client requests, and it will encapsulates the internal system architecture and provides an API that is tailored to each client, so that it will easily interact with the relevant service in the server and gets the response back through a gateway. Okay, so if you look at the simple diagram of API gateway, this would be like this. So this is my clients where I'm the client. I'm going to access these API services which are deployed, hosted at the cloud, and it has different services. This is the catalog service, this is the cart service, this is the inventory service, this is the order service. So I know the path of this API service because URL, universal resource locator, is a path which is defining my, defining the relevant API service path. So using this URL, anyone can invoke the service. So here to invoke a catalog service, so we need to use this catalog URL by the client. So how this client is accessing all these services which are hosted on the cloud is through an API gateway. It will get the services and get the response back to the client. So here client is requesting the required service from the API gateway, and this API gateway is communicate with the deployed and hosted services on the cloud, and it gets the response. So generally the overview of API gateway pattern generally, as I told you, is a service which is the entry point into the application from the outside world, and it's responsible for the request routing and other API composition and other functions such as authentication, etc., etc. But the drawbacks of clients making multiple requests in order to display information to the user are well known, right? So a much better approach is for a client to make a single request to what's known as the API gateway. An API gateway is a service which is the single entry point for API request, right? So if you look at the the relationship between the clients and API gateway and the services. So here are my API services. That means backend services like order service, consume service, delivery service, and just web application. Because sometimes I may deploy my HTML and JavaScript related web application in the cloud, and I wanted to access this through an API gateway. Hence, I may deploy this simple web application also on the cloud, and I can access through an API gateway or through a firewall. So these are the services. Okay. So this is my browser where I have HTML and JavaScript application, which requires a web application response from the web application deployed on the host. So I may go through a firewall. I may not require API gateway because I'm not interacting with any services, but only services I interact through a API gateway. So API gateway is responsible for request routing and API composition and protocol translation. All these API requests. So if you look at here browser, I need a web page here, and also I need a request service from this backend services. Hence I make a request directly through firewall to the web application here to access from server. And once I get this response, and again I will interact with the API gateway to get some services. And if you look at other clients, iPhone, Android applications or third-party applications, for the required API request, they will directly interact with the API gateway. Through API gateway, they will get the required response from the backend services. So this API gateway routes some requests to the appropriate services, right? The gateway handles other requests using the API composition pattern and invoking multiple services and aggregating the result. So I will talk about the benefits of API gateway. So first I will talk about the routing. So one of the key functions of API gateway is routing, request routing. So an API gateway implements some API operations by routing requests to the corresponding service, right? So like here, I need order service. I'm just hitting to the API gateway, and this will interact with the order service or consume service or deliver service, and it gives back response to the requested client. So when it receives a request from the client API gateway, the API gateway consults a routing map that is specified in the server. So this API gateway generally have a routing map inside of this API gateway configuration. So for example, map an HTTP method that the path to the HTTP URL of a service. So this function is identical to the reverse proxy features provided by web servers such as Nginx. Okay, this is just reversal process. So this will checks the map configurations inside of API gateway. Like, so when you're sending a request here, it looks for mapping mapped resource or services in the map service configuration here, and then it redirects to that mapped service URL here in the backend. That is what the route mapping. Okay, because sometimes I may have a huge or lengthy or too long API endpoint or URL. So I just expose a short method here through configuration. And once it reaches this API gateway, I'm just looking at the map configuration here, and then I communicate with the actual API service. That is what routing map request routing. And second benefit is API composition. An API gateway typically does more than a reverse proxy. So it might also implement some API operations using API composition. Like in my case, I use some example, like I need employee details and the company details. That means, so I just wanted a query about the list of employees who are working in some X company, and also whose salary is greater than 10,000. So in my requirement, in my request, I have multiple, the criterias. If I want to get, so I need to hit multiple services, right? Or leave about employees and companies. Here I have order, consumer, delivery, right? So in this case, looking back here, mobile application makes one request here, simple, which fetches the order details from multiple services. That means mobile client makes a single get order details request to the API gateway. But instead of that, he will interact with the order service where it has different endpoints. So to get the order details, this request will interact with the order service, but within the order service, one of the endpoint is depending on a consumer service. That means, so how many services, how many orders are consumed by the consumer or customer? And based on that, I just wanted the report of available orders. So if you are not implementing API composition, then we need to hit two times to the two services. First one is the order service and second one is the consumer service. If I have a API composition method like get order details, then within this get order details, I will make hits here to different services, and finally I will make the response and I will queue back to the mobile. That means instead of hitting multiple times to multiple services, you just merge them and expose a composition method outside to the client, and client will interact with the composition method. And within that composition method, through an API gateway, I will interact with different services and I get the response back, and I just same response give back to the client. And next one is protocol translation. That means API gateway might also perform protocol translation. That is, API gateway might provide a RESTful API to external clients, even though the application services use a mixture of protocols internally, include REST and gRPC. When needed, the implementation of some API operations translates between RESTful external API and the internal gRPC based APIs. That means, so I just wanted to expose, the HTTPS protocol outside. And once the client makes a request to the API gateway with HTTPS request, I just convert it into HTTP and interact with these services, or vice versa. I will expose HTTP request outside to the clients, and clients are making a request with HTTP protocol here. And within the API gateway, I will translate HTTP to HTTPS and then interacting with the services. So this is how the protocol translation is happening in the API gateway, and helping clients to always use HTTP instead of HTTPS. Okay. And also, if you want to define gRPC, or the gRPC based APIs, that time also, if you want to define a translation between RESTful external API and internal gRPC based APIs, we will use API gateway configurations here. Okay, and coming to the next one is edge functions. So edge functions is nothing but, if you want to implement authentication or authorization or rate limiting or caching or metric collections or reporting, request logging kind of methods, because these methods are common for all the services, right? So if you want to implement edge functions, so the best location of implementing REST edge functions is API gateway. Some of the REST functions is edge functions is authentication, authorization, rate limiting, caching, metric collection, and request logging. These are the common functions for all RESTful API services. Okay. So what is an authentication? So generally, we should not expose the hosted RESTful API endpoint to the client without authentication. So authentication is generally verifying the identity of the client making the request. It verifies the identity of client making the request. So once it is valid, then it looks for authorization. So this is simply verifying the client is authorized to perform that particular operation. And coming to the rate limit, rate limiting. So this is limiting how many requests per seconds are allowed from either a specific client or from all clients. So this is limiting how many requests per second are allowed either a specific client or all clients. So, and another function is caching. It's nothing but cache the responses to reduce the number of requests made to the server. This is the performance aspect. And again, metric collection. Generally, we use this for building analytics. Okay. And logging, this is again log request to generate reports, kind of. So these are the edge functions. We generally define these functions within the API gateway, and these different places in your application actually allow you to implement these functions. The first option is to implement these edge functions in the backend services. This might make sense for some functions such as caching, metric collection, and authentication, but it's generally more secure if the application authentication request on the edge before they reach the service. Okay. So before reaching the required service, we should authenticate the request using these edge functions. And second option is to implement these edge functions in edge service, which is upstream from an API gateway. The edge service is the first point of contact for an external client, so that every request is authenticating before reaching the required service. An important benefit of using dedicated edge service is that it separates concerns. Okay, the API gateway focuses on API routing and composition. So another benefit is that centralize the responsibility for critical edge functions such as authentication. So these are the different kinds of benefits when you use this API gateway to communicate the hosted services from the client missions. So when it comes to the architecture of API gateway, so this API gateway has a layered modular architecture. Its architecture, which is shown here, consisting of two layers. Okay, this is the API layer and this is the common layer. Each API model implements an API for a particular client. Each API model implements an API for a particular client. Okay. So the common layer implements the shared functionality, including edge functions. So generally, mobile API, which implements the API for the different things. Okay. And browser API, which implements the API to JavaScript applications running in the browser. And public API, which implements the API for third-party developers. But the common layer is common, which has shared functionality. So API model implements each API operation in one of two ways. Some API operations map directly to a single service API operation. An API model implements these operations by routing requests to the corresponding service API operation. So, however, API layer would be in a different way, like mobile has different one and browser APIs has different one and third party has different one. But common layer is common for all the API layers. So this contains edge functions as well as the relevant service functions. The mobile client will directly contact the mobile API layer here. This is the API gateway. Within the API gateway, we have two layers. Okay. This client will directly contact this layer here. This layer again contacts the common layer here. Similarly, browser, JavaScript application, and third-party applications. So overall, the API gateway act as a single entry point for all the services. So whatever services you are hosting on the server, those service requests should come through API gateway in a single entry. Okay. So this is how the architecture is built in API gateway to the adopt the different kind of benefits which I have explained in the earlier slide. So I hope you understand the architecture benefits of API gateway and the main purpose of edge functions, which are defining in separate edge service and accessing through an API gateway before reaching the actual service. Thanks for listening this video. Please subscribe this YouTube channel for more videos. Thank you.